Yes. Okay, very good. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone here as well. We need to turn around quite a bit today, so that keeps me sporty. Excellent. And we need to switch, so it's a bit difficult to switch back and forth with the different kinds of presentational formats, so bear with me a little bit. The title of this meeting, which I would like much more physically, but again, this is against the law, so we need to do it like this. Sorry for that. This is on individual differences in cognitive control. And what does that mean? To explain to you, it would be great if we can now switch to my presentation. Do I just need to start it? Yes. So I hope you can, so we don't see anyone, including me. Okay, so perhaps you see me, perhaps not. I think we need to, yeah. Oh yeah, now here I am. Good. So, this is about control and individual differences. Can someone check whether these other people see the presentation?
Yes.
They do. Good. So this starts with control. And it would be great if this would move forward, which it doesn't. Okay, so here you see my little Super Mario version of cognitive control. And this is how the literature understands cognitive control. Namely, it is us against all odds. It is we are overcoming all the obstacles that life presents to us. And the better we do, the more cognitive control we exert. This is the basic idea. And there are many different approaches of that. Here's one functional approach from Shallis, where you see that there's a perceptual system that triggers many things automatically, but if things are complicated, like in the case of conflict, when I do not know what to do, then the supervisory attentional system, which is the cognitive control layer, the instance that is exerting the cognitive control, is helping me. And then it decides, or it helps me to decide what action I should carry out. Now, this is goal-driven. Miller and Cohen were more interested in the brain aspects of it. Here the idea is that the prefrontal cortex plays a particularly important role. It basically is the supercontroller that magically tells us the right thing to do, typically, and the less our cognitive controller is working, the weaker our prefrontal cortex, the more I'm automatically acting out my urges, but if I do the right thing, then my prefrontal cortex is helping me. So this is taking to explain all sorts of things. And then I wondered, what's wrong with this? And what's wrong with this has to do with a number of observations I made, and I present you with two of them. So in the beginning of my scientific life, I was working on the Simon effect, a particularly boring, stupid effect that emerges from an equally boring task. So you're presenting with red and green dots, and let's assume whenever you see green, you press a left key, and whenever you see red, you press the right key. Now, the dot is presented randomly on the left or right of some central fixation point, and it turns out that whenever it appears on the side of the correct response, you're faster than if it appears on the other side. So far so good. Here you see the typical interaction that you get. The left response is faster if you present the stimulus on the left as compared to the right, and the right response is faster if the stimulus appears on the right. Now, that's all fine, but then in the beginning of my career, I was young, and when I typically submitted the paper to the same journal, Psychological Research, again and again and again, and I had always the same editor, Herbert Heuer, and he would always ask the same two reviewers, which is Robert Proctor and Carlo Humiltà, one American and one Italian colleague, because they were very good. They knew exactly everything about the Simon effect. And so they would judge my paper. All papers in the beginning, every paper would go to these two people, and they started complaining when they met me on conferences and so forth and so on. Now, obviously, because they would review all my stuff, I would read their papers as well, and I had to review their papers when they submitted this, and then I knew what they're doing. And what they're doing is, not surprisingly, Simon effect, but if you look closer, then there is something surprising, namely, whereas I would typically get a visual Simon effect, the auditory is much bigger, a visual of about 17, 18, 19 perhaps milliseconds. Robert Proctor would sometimes have large papers with Simon effects of the size 6 to 10 milliseconds. I have no idea how he got this significant. Great statistics program, I assume. And Carlo Humiltà always had way over 30 millisecond effects. So how can it be that such a stupid little effect that is produced by such a boring little task can have so different sizes in the world? How about America and Italy? What makes it in Italy? And is it the computer? Is it the people? Is it the country? Is it the temperature? I had no idea. Then later Lorenza and I were doing experiments where we compared, as you can see here, Dutch Calvinists and atheists. So this is the religion these people have, the faith they have. And Italian Catholics and seculars. You do not really get atheists there. They are typically all baptized, but they are not strongly, so there are some people who are not strong believers. And as you can see, it's not the exact same country division here, but you see that number one, the country does matter, and second, the religion also does matter. So simple things like religious faith, which apparently has nothing to do with pressing a left and right key and processing red and green dots, can vary the size of this effect. How come? No one gave me any idea. So the second observation was this. So with many colleagues in Munich, I started my research on action control and the immersion of that. I'm not going through all that, but basically we were interested in action effect. So whenever you see a green, let's say you press a left key, you may hear a low tone, boop, and if you press the right key, you may hear a high tone, boop, so that you boop, 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 all day. Now, do you admit these people that are kind of coming in? Because there are people coming in all the time, and we need to admit them somehow. Otherwise, okay. 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 Yeah. Sorry for that. Now we get back to the presentation. Yes. So. And then what you get, if you later on present people with those tones while they are to press a left or right key, that matters. So whenever you are about to press the left key and you hear a low tone, you're faster. But if you hear a high tone, you're slower. Because apparently the action effects play a role in the process of response selection. So far so good. And then a career change happened. I got a chair in the Netherlands, and then I had to travel. Again, this is not working. Yes, and now I have to start it again. And then I traveled from Munich to Leiden, the Netherlands. And then I carried on with my research. And the first experiment we did on the action effects did work, as you can see here, nice effect. And then the second and the third and the fourth and the seventh and the ninth and the 12th, all these experiments failed, failed, failed. Never again in the Netherlands I could ever replicate this effect. What the hell is going on? I had no idea. Well, this and other observations made me think, is really cognitive control as we think it is? And there were other people saying, no, perhaps not. So there are people like Goschke saying, well, we may have reasons sometimes to be very persistent, but sometimes also flexibility is much better. It's much more important to let go, to no longer focus, not to concentrate, not to select so much. Others, from a more neuro perspective, were saying prefrontal, yes, does make an important contribution, but striatal also is sometimes important, especially if you open up, if you switch, and so forth and so on. Others were more interested in dopaminergic receptor systems, like Dorstowitz, who was saying that D1, which is very dominant in the prefrontal cortex, is important for other things than D2 receptors, which are particularly dominant in the striatum. So the idea was that perhaps control exists, but it is only one part. Our traditional idea is only 50% of the truth, and the other truth is pretty much the opposite. Now then we would need some regulation of these two things, and that brought me to this idea of meta-control. And the question is not the term, but the question is, how do we understand individual differences? So where do we start? And our idea was guided by a review in Tics from Bogac, where he tried to identify systems, models of other people which would be biologically plausible, which are about response selection and decision making. So what's the commonality? There are many different models, but what's the commonality across them? And his idea was that there are two commonalities. One, something that pops up in all the models that he investigated and looked at. And this is number one, there is competition between alternatives. So the brain is competitive. Whatever wins produces losers. And this even starts at the retina, for contour control and so forth and so on, but goes further and further. So there's always struggle. There's always pros and cons and competition between them. So if you have a response decision between A and B, the more you count evidence for A, the more will B be suppressed and likely to lose the competition, and vice versa. The second commonality is the competition bias, namely that our decisions and many things that we do are affected by our current goals. So when the goal is like this, the outcome may be different than if the goal is like that. So in the sense that the goal is always supporting those alternatives that are compatible with it and does not support others. So in that case, A would be more likely, it's not certain because competition is a dynamic thing, but it is more likely to win. Anyway, so this is, if that is the case, then persistence, the old-fashioned common idea of goal, would be a situation where the goal support happens to be very strong and the competition very stiff. But there are other situations that are not so well covered by this, namely flexibility situations where goal support is tiny and the competition, we can wait with this, and competition is weak between them. Now, this is only our view of this, but the essence here is that individual differences might lie in these two aspects, namely the degree of goal support and the degree of competition in each situation. So this is our way to understand this. But the speakers may have different ideas about individual differences, and that's fine, and we want to listen to that. But I wanted to make clear why we started our interest in individual differences. And so the idea would be that every one of us can move more to the left or to the right towards persistence or flexibility, and that produces behavior. And the behavior is functional or effective or successful or not, is rewarded or not, is approved by others, by the social situation and the social environment or not. And that feeds back onto the area where we like to be. So if everyone says, oh, persistent behavior is super cool, please, you get more money because you're sitting there and your Excel sheet processing is excellent. So then you would tend to gravitate towards the left if your genes allow you to do so. Whereas if your behavior, if you're an artist and if you do crazy stuff and innovative and you surprise everyone and you're not very likable, then you may get approval, tons of money for your music or your paintings, and then you tend to go to the right. You may be particularly flexible. Not very persistent, but very flexible. Okay, so this is my story again. This may be the Protestants and these may be the Catholics. So the key question for everyone, independent of your eventual answer, how do we mechanistically explain individual differences in cognitive control? We are interested in your ideas, so let us know. This is supported by the province here, and we are curious to listen what comes next. So let's switch to the next one. Who is, I can start with the introduction.
That would be me, I think, right?